a professional coach. He works with executives and leaders all over the world. But it's apart from that, apart from working with businesses and professionals, he also works as a life coach to people like you and me. He studied his master's in coaching at Middlesex University, and that was about 15 years ago. And since then, he has really applied his passion to help other people live and find and live their potential. He continues to learn, which I really admire about him. He has mentors and supervisors like Professor Lowe and Dr. Hugo Tron. And I love that about Reinhard, that he remains open and he remains humble. It doesn't matter what level of expertise he's reached. His area of expertise that he's particularly passionate about is existentialism. And for some of you, you might think, oh, I know exactly what that is. And others of you, you're thinking, what is existentialism? But it really is I'll let him explain it, but it's to do with dilemma, and it's got to do with opportunity, and it's got to do with getting unstuck when you just feel stuck in life. So Reinhard, perhaps we can start like that. Welcome. And please do start off by just, telling us a little bit more about what existentialism really means.
So existentialism actually has, depending who you talk to, people go, oh, I know that guy, Nietzsche. Nietzsche, he's like an atheist, right? And Sartre, he is existentialist, and, I suppose Nietzsche didn't know about the word existentialism, and Sartre would have hated if somebody called him that, but it's very wide. But generally, the topics and what we deal with is topics familiar to all of us. So maybe I should rather say the topics. So it's topics like meaning, hope, what we talk about today, freedom, love. And you would say, Reinhard, love is like an emotion. Well, love is an emotion when it's passionate, but love is also existential when it's not necessarily passionate. Courage, guilt, death, bitterness. Oh, I thought that is emotion. Well, bitterness is much more than just a raw emotion. Peace, belonging, loneliness, and you say like, no, the emotion is being sad, but the existential side of it is loneliness. Stuff like longing, resentment, individuality, identity, these things, joy, envy, responsibility, choice, freedom, these are existential topics. And some of you might say, oh, but they're spiritual topics. Well, they could be spiritual topics too, so maybe if you are, but they're not religious, if you know what I mean. They don't have to be tied to any religion. You don't have to be religious. You don't have to believe in God. And they can still be spiritual or existential. Now, if it's not your fancy to call it existential, you can call it spiritual if you want to, but it's not at all necessarily religious. Although a lot of these things also play off in religion, but it doesn't have to. So those are probably the topics of it. Yeah.
So hope is an existential issue. Yeah. We're saying it can be connected to your faith if you're a person of faith, but it doesn't have to be. But it has an impact on how we live, the choices we make. And I think why I'm particularly interested in it is because it makes a difference to people's lives, which is one of my big drivers. And in my workspace, I work a lot with people in career transition, people who are looking for new work, who need career coaches, who are making choices around their lives and careers. Sometimes they feel afraid or hopeless about going for an interview. And then on the other side, we sometimes have companies who have lost hope. Sometimes lost hope about finding the right person, but sometimes just lost hope in terms of where their lives are going. But I know that hope is not contained within those parameters. It affects every area of our lives. Yeah. So Reinhard, tell us a little bit more about, what do we actually mean by hope if we zone in on that a bit more?
Okay, well, since the topic is hope, well, if you Google hope, you'll find that hope is both a verb and a noun, and so, you can be hoping for something. I am hoping for is an action type word, and we talk about hope also in terms of a noun, So if you look for synonyms, you can look at things like a yearning, a longing, a belief, a trust, or whatever it is. But words like that, but we use it so easily, I hope you're well. I hope that you are well, but it's also something that's very heavy. I have lost hope is much more heavy than I hope you're well, So
Right.
It almost hope has levels of intensity, So it's sort of an add-in word that we use not wrongly, but it's also essential to everything in our life. Without hope, I almost want to say there is no hope, Yeah, so it's one of those essential things.
Yeah, I think you're right in that the term can be used in such different contexts. I mean, we can be, driving somewhere and want to stop by the side of the road on, one of your adventures, and we can say, oh, I hope they have nice coffee here. But at the same time, someone who's very ill, we can say, sure, I really hope that they get better. Exactly. Or that they don't die. I mean, that's such a different weight to that one word in such different contexts.
No, I'm with you.
So Reinhard, when, in your view, do we need hope? So not hope as in, I hope they have nice coffee, but hope as in on a kind of heavier note. When do we need hope?
Well, just on that, Jane, I was in 2 coffee shops today. And I won't name them. The first one really makes nice coffee, so they really make nice coffee. And I don't have to hope for nice coffee because I'll always get nice coffee. The other one makes the nicest breakfast. But I don't live in hope that one day they're going to make nice coffee, So I just order tea there because that would be like hopeless. And maybe I'll get into that. But there's a certain time to say, let me rather get tea and stop moaning about and hoping that they'll make nice coffee. But okay, that's another topic.
No, so true.
When do we need hope? One would say always. But let's be real, when you're lonely and maybe you're looking for a partner in life and you are maybe getting a little bit older or whatever it is, or maybe you're young and all of a sudden you get a partner. You don't need hope anymore because you're in love and you have a partner. Do you need hope for that? No, because it's existed. I hope, financially is difficult. Hope one day I get out of it. Now you won the lotto, But you don't need hope. Problems are solved, So sometimes in some issues we don't need hope anymore.
But so we have hope and then we stop having it when that's realized, when it's real.
Because it's fulfilled, right?
The need for hope is gone, yes.
Yeah. But there's always topics we need hope in. Because if we think about it, and I just want to quickly share my sort of my background screen. I'll show you something. Let me just, here's my virtual background. Now Jane would know what this is about, right, Jane?
Yep. One of my favorite spots in the world.
My favorite spots in the world. This is a forest in the town where my father grew up in Germany. The forest, the town is Helminghausen. It's a huge metropolis in North Rhine-Westphalia. There's 200 people. When my dad stayed there 60, 70 years ago, and there's still 200 people. They don't go bigger, but there you go. This picture I took the day my mom passed away 2 years ago. And, so I had to walk and I had to get my thoughts together. No, I see myself as a spiritual man. So I walked, meditated, prayed, and for a couple of hours. And one of the pictures I took was I was walking through a forest and there in the sunlight, if I duck here in the middle there, the background is sort of in the middle, there's a little black spot, but that's a deer now. And I thought, and it's in the sunlight, and I thought, well, there's hope, and sometimes we need, so we need things like that to show, hey, there is hope, and for all of us, we, like me, my mom was sick for many years. My father died tragically. I've been without a job. I've been with a job. I've been ill. I've been healthy. I've been all these things. I've been poor where people had to give me meals. I had sometimes I couldn't pay the rent. All those things. But all of us can relate to these things. Maybe they're not here now. Maybe you had cancer, maybe you have cancer, maybe somebody else have cancer, maybe somebody had COVID. These issues are always there in some way or another. So yes, in some things, hope of that issue is past, but there's always a need for us to be hopeful. So those are the times, it's just like oil. Hope keeps us going. It keeps us going. And the third stage is when we talk about hopelessness or despair, where you have lost what we say, all hope that something could be different. And then we actually need hope more. And we'll talk about stages 2 and 3. But so one, we always need hope, but 2, specifically, we always need hope in the areas where it's difficult, and we all have them, and we especially need hope when the wheels come off.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, Reinhard, that we always need hope. Sometimes we're more aware of it than other times, depending on our circumstances, and that we might all get hope in different ways. So I see there's a message in the chat from Kerr saying to be able to connect with nature is such a healer. So that resonates with you, where walking for those 2 hours and praying after your mum had died, and I remember that day, that was healing for you. And seeing that deer pop up was almost like a message that there is hope. And I've heard so many people share those kinds of experiences where they were feeling really low and hopeless, and something happened and they suddenly felt there is hope. I can carry on. I remember my dad even sharing something like that, where he had made up a song that he sang at my mum's funeral, and he'd recorded it, and he was walking through a place after she died that was very special to him. And suddenly his recording on his phone just started playing, and he hadn't switched it on. And so, some people would say, well, that's coincidence. Some people would say that's God. I would say that's God. But it gave him hope. He was in a space where he felt, there's nothingness, there's emptiness. And then something happens and you're like, okay, no, it's okay. I can get through it. And it doesn't mean that the circumstances change. It's just that we change the way we see things, and that changes the way that we feel. So I love what you're sharing about hope, and that everybody needs it and everybody sees it and it's inspired differently. But how do we get hope? I mean, you've shared about a situation where it almost came to you after your mum died. But if we're feeling like, okay, nothing is coming my way, how do we get that?
Okay, Jan, that's a very good question, and that's what I promised in the videos. I promised that I'm going to be practical about the philosophical thing. One of the societies I belong to is the practitioners of philosophy. There's a long German word for it, but I mean, for me, philosophy shouldn't just be talked about in a lecture hall. These things that we talk about existentially should be practiced and can be practiced, and hope can be practiced pragmatically. And so that's what I actually want to talk about. So, I mean, I said in the video earlier, I might refer to my notes, so that there's no pulse. You can't go to the pharmacy and say, Mr. or Mrs. Pharmacist, can you please give me some pills? I lost hope. You know, there's not a DSM code in psychology for hope. There's a DSM code for lots of different words of depression, you know, and fear and anxiety or whatever, but there's not a code for hope. If you look at depression on the code, it would say symptoms of the depression is hopelessness, but there's not you can't get a pill for it. So, but it's a little bit difficult. And I think if one view your world from a holistic point of view, for me, it's the easiest way to describe it. So one is, let's say, an existential or a spiritual layer, which I talked about earlier, the guilt, the freedom, the meaning, the hope, the loneliness, all those sort of things. There's a mental layer, your cognition, your perspective, the way you processed concepts, or even your emotion, because your emotion isn't your thinking. You can be sad and think about being sad. So there's a difference between emotions and thinkings. They are separate. They do influence each other, but they are separate. You know, so then there is your emotions, your mood, your mood, you're happy or sad. We always, when the kids, you know, me and Jane, we have two boys. And even for me, we don't want to stereotype boys or men, but it's difficult for them to sometimes identify their emotions. We would you say, are you sad, mad, glad, or something else? I can't remember.
Afraid, you know? Or embarrassed.
Yeah, you know.
Happy, glad, sad, mad, afraid, embarrassed.
Yeah, and those are primal emotions. We all have them. They then play out in existential things or art or in mental or perspectives, but those are the emotions. Or desire is another emotion, right? We also need desire, you know. So if you look at Freud, you know, it's like, how do you run away as fear or angst or passion or desire? But those are primal stuff, you know. So love can be passionate, but love can also be existential or spiritual, and belonging. So those are two different things. Belonging isn't the emotion. Being sad because you are lonely is the emotion of an existential dilemma, if you want to call it that way. So if you can start understanding a holistic perspective, there's an existential, a spiritual level, a mental level, an emotional level, and obviously a physical level. You know, our bodies. But they're not separate. They all work together. And it's very important to understand that, because when I talk about practically working towards hope, you need to understand that. Now, those four things rests on three things: yourself, your people you surround yourself with, your friends, family, you know, work, and the environment, the world you live in. So those things don't live in an island. They are influenced by yourself, your closest friends, family, and the environment. So now we get to how you change things. So the first one we actually dealt with already. So it's pragmatically. Sometimes it's like, I wish. Now, I remember I was 31, 32. So I worked with Jane as a minister when we were young. So I studied, then I went into the ministry in a church. Then I realized it's not for me, and nothing against the church or anything. I just realized, like, hey, I'm not a minister. And then now I had to do something else. Now I'm 28 or so, and I started working and I did renovations of houses, and then went to marketing. But then I sort of studied more and more. And at a stage about 30, 33, 32, 33, I'm like, geez, I got to do something different here. You know, I really want to work with my mind. I like, because my undergraduates were part of psychology, that sort of thing. And so there was a longing, there was a hope, but then there was also, I need to now make a plan. I can sit here and yearn and hope to be something different, or I can do something about it. And, you know, I was lucky surrounding some people helped me out. You know, you say, okay, well, Reinhard, you got lucky. Some of it is luck, and some of it I had to do, you know. So the luck was somebody sponsored a master's degree. That is, for me, I have ADHD. For me to get a master's degree is more than luck. It is blood, sweat, and tears, if you know me, So it's pragmatically doing something. So some things you can actually just, okay, you can sit and hope, or you can actually do something. Okay, Reinhard, I get that. Now, the second thing is you are lonely, somebody is sick in your family, you are sick, you are dying, your mom is dying, your dad is dying, I remember, and everybody you listen to can all identify with trauma. When I was 25 years old, my dad took his own life. But before that, we took him to the hospital. He was deeply depressed. And these fears existed. And I was hoping he did get better, but he didn't, and it was hard. And so I didn't realize. So did my life fall apart? No, it was very sad. It was difficult. But through the trauma, something else also happened. It also influenced how. Am I glad my dad died in such a way? Of course not. But that brought to me working with deep existential, difficult things that's not related to psychology, but much more to this field. And although they work together, I will always refer depression, anxiety to psychologists. So that's not the field I work in, and I think and I respect that deeply. But in my field, it's also very important. Now that the trauma I went through also influenced that. So you need, the second thing I want to talk about is support. You need people who can help you. If you're sad, lonely, and hopeless, surround yourself with people, friends, family, even strangers. Now, there's three things that I want to talk about. So, Jan, you can cut in if I go too long on it.
No,
but
all good.
Just quickly is the naysayers, and I remember Jane, I asked Jane if I could share. Jane's mom had cancer. She spoke about it. And I remember, people came around from her church and said, and listen, if you confess your sin, I'm sure you got cancer because you have obviously sinned. I went ballistic, I'm like.
And I think also, so because that, and then also, if you have enough faith, your cancer will go away. It's not going away because you don't believe strongly enough, which is not a truth anywhere, but it's actually, and I think people said it wanting to be encouraging and hoping that they could help their friend get better, but it actually had the opposite effect because it makes people feel like, oof, okay, if my circumstances don't change, it's my fault. And sometimes there are circumstances that don't change, and it is because we don't do something.
No, sure.
But for something that's out of your control like that, that's hard. It's hard to keep hope with people who intend well, but doesn't produce hope.
Yeah, from a theological sense, in my religion, is just simply untrue. I can't speak for other religions, but even if you're not religious, that's just chaotic. Even if you think out your own type of religion, that'd be weird, So I don't know where it comes from, but okay, I don't want to start a religious debate, That is as good as say people in South Africa, you suffered under apartheid because you sinned. You would stone me if I say something ridiculous like that. Let's just be honest here. So there's the naysayers. There's also the false hope people, what you want to call it. I'm sure it's going to be better. Don't worry. They mean well, but that doesn't help. And then there's the true support who say, listen, I can't make it better and I don't have an answer, but what can I do to support or help? And sometimes it's pragmatic, sometimes it's just listening, so to surround yourself with friends like that. And you'll be surprised, I sometimes out of despair, people who you thought weren't friends pitch up and they go, I've been through this. Maybe you don't know me, but can I do something? Can I help? And also in these times, you also see who's people who you thought were friends are not friends anymore. But from your side, you also need to open yourself up to that. That's very important. Don't suffer in silence. It doesn't help. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And the second thing about getting help is, or the third thing is, get professional help. Because of the mood thing. Remember in holism I talked about, the emotion and the existential are linked. The funny thing is, if you are deeply depressed, and maybe because of a lack of hope or whatever it is, you need to still lift your mood. So maybe a psychiatrist can help, psychologist can help, a spiritual counselor can help, whatever religion you go to, your coach can help. So get professional help. So even if they don't give you pills for hope, but because anxiety and depression and despair, or those things are related to hope, if you feel a bit better, you almost gain a little bit of hope. They're not set apart. So don't go, oh, it's just a spiritual or religious or existential. They all link together. So and then I'll get to the last part, Jane. Is there a question you want to ask at this stage before I jump into
I think just to summarize, and all of us, we've shared some of our experiences. I'm sure everyone here today and beyond could share experiences that were hard for them and what helped them get hope. But I think what you've really emphasized there that is helpful is, who do you surround yourself with at a time like that? And it might not be the people that you thought would be, but the people who give hope are not the people who come along with false ideas of how to get hope, are not the overly positive, it'll be okay, but then they run away. But sometimes it's not even the people who can change the situation or do something, but it's just people who are willing to walk the road with you. Because there's something hope-giving about just not being alone in a situation where neither of you can do anything, but it gives courage to just not be alone.
Okay. And so the last part of it, so I talked about friends, I talked about professionals, but I also want to talk about self. What can you self do? I think and maybe the professionals and the friends can also help with this, but you need to talk about what, sometimes we hope for something. You got to say, listen, is this going to actually, is there, because we can also have false hope, so sometimes we wish and we say, I hope, but it's never going to happen, I will never sing in the opera, I promise you. I am tone deaf, and I can hear if you can't sing on key, but I literally cannot. If I start singing, everybody will disappear. So I can hope to sing well. It ain't gonna happen, So I can say, well, maybe I have other creative outlets. I don't have to sing, So certain things don't change, and to actually go on about it actually makes you more hopeless. So the first thing you got to be honest about, but talk to other people about it before you give up hope. This is something to talk to. If I speak to Jane and say, Jane, I'm going to give up singing, and she will say, hallelujah, well, I've given up that 30 years ago already, but or somebody would say, no, don't give up hope because of this. So even check that with somebody, but be realistic. And then for the things that can work, small steps. I spoke to a friend recently, and friend's depressed. It's like, Reinhard, is this ever going to go away? He said, I spoke to my therapist, and he said, this is going to be like, my therapist said, sort of a year, whatever. I said, that's awesome. It's like, well, what do you mean? I said, your therapist was honest with you, but that's great. These things take time. With his sort of thing, it takes time. I said, and we talked about small steps. What can you pragmatically, small steps do? My mom was sick for many, many years. And so we had to do small steps. I didn't know what career I had to do, was struggling, didn't really get going for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Small steps. Eventually got the money together, started studying. Even that was small steps, building yourself, small steps, because sometimes we want something to be here and we want the luck, or maybe you're not religious, you go, wow, pray, we want the faith, like, hey, if you're religious, like, my God needs to fix it right now. We're not satisfied to make a little step. You got to be happy sometimes. If it all lands in your lap, that's good. But I think a lot of this stuff is little steps. Then be real to your friends. Very important. You got to be real with them about your feelings. And it's not, sometimes, people's like, how you real with your feelings is also important. You can go to your friends and go, oh, it's like, but say to them, listen, today is not my best day. If somebody comes to me and say, today is not my best day, I can really make a difference. I can help, and they're honest. And maybe you won't word it like that, but be honest about your feelings. Then you can manage them, acknowledge them to yourself too. Then the other thing is get outward focus. Even if the topic or the theme you are hopeless for, let's say you're terminally ill, because at some stage, all of us, either if the bus doesn't hit you, you're going to be terminally ill. I don't want to be a messenger of dread, but as an existentialist, I must be honest with you. If the bus don't hit you, maybe a blood clot hits your brain and you're dead. But even that, if you die slowly when you're old or young or whatever, we're going to be ill at some stage, If you can't fix that, then say, okay, maybe I have a year or two or whatever. And they say, well, Ryan, it's nice for you to say, here you stand. But hey, tomorrow I can go to the doctor and he says, Ryan, you have cancer. We can't cut it out. It's a year max. So then I have to decide, what else can I do? Maybe I can't fix it. Maybe it's a loneliness thing. Maybe it's a physical disability, whatever it is. But then change your focus to something else outward. And the very last thing, Jane, is the age-old thing of your physical stuff, your body. My son Ross did some public videos on ADHD, and he talked about doing 10 push-ups, and people's like laugh, and he said, but it makes a difference. If you walk around the block, if you feel hopeless and despair, you feel better already. Do some exercise, eat healthy. You go, what has that to do with hope? Well, what you eat and how you exercise, whatever you can do, lift your mood. And when your mood is lifted, you also have a bit more chance to have hope. So all of these things work together. I can wish it was as easy as saying, the matrix, is it the red pill or the blue pill? Sorry, there is no red pill and blue pill. It's a smorgasbord of all these little things, so...
Yeah, I like what you say, that it's a smorgasbord, because everyone has to make a choice and pick what works for them. Sorry, I interrupted you there.
No, and so that's sort of my view of things. And I mean, many people have a different view, but I wanted to share what worked for me and what worked for a lot of my clients, And...
Yeah, Reinhard, I think what you're saying is so true. And I feel that in my life, where I know what brings me hope and I know what creates energy. And based on what you're saying, I know that if I want to have energy in a day and if I want to remain positive, I need to wake up early. I need to spend that time reading and in prayer and meditation. I need to go and do exercise, which is usually a cold water swim, which not many people want to join me in. I need to eat healthily. I need to drink water. And in terms of my relationships, I need to stay connected to people, but not just stay connected to people looking for encouragement. To be encouraged myself, I actually need to go out and find people to encourage every day. And that outward focus brings me joy and encouragement. So it's a funny thing how it works. When we give is usually, we get more than when we receive. It's very true. So yeah, I love what you're saying. I'm very grateful for your time. Thank you for sharing your expertise. Thank you for opening up your heart, your life, your experiences, and for being vulnerable. I think there's been many comments in the chat box about how helpful this is, and with people resonating with the different things we can do to create hope for positive energy in tough times. And our details are in the chat box, so please do connect with us on LinkedIn. Reinhard is Reinhard, REINHARD, at outerboxthinking.com, and I'm Jane at outerboxthinking.com. But please do stay connected, and let's chat some more if you'd like to talk some more about creating hope. Thanks, Reinhard.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you for allowing me to be part of your program.
Love it. You're my favorite person to interview.
Thank you. You're most kind.